Dumfriesshire. The County of Dumfries is lieutenancy area and historic county of Scotland. It borders Kirkcudbrightshire to the west, Ayrshire to the northwest, Lanarkshire, Peeblesshire and Selkirkshire to the north, and Roxburghshire to the east. To the south is the coast of the Solway Firth, and the English county of Cumberland. Dumfries has three subdivisions: Annandale, Eskdale and Nithsdale. For purposes of local government, it is combined with Galloway to form the council area of Dumfries and Galloway. Geography. The coastline measures 21 miles. The county slopes very gradually from the mountainous districts of the southern uplands in the north, down to the sea, lofty hills alternating in parts with stretches of tableland or rich fertile homes. At various points within a few miles of the Solway are tracts of mossland, like Craig's Moss, Locker Moss and Longbridge Moor in the west, and Nutberry Moss in the east, all once under water, but since largely reclaimed. The principal mountains occur near the northern boundaries, the highest being White Combe, Hartfell, Saddle Yoke, Swatterfell, Lowther Hills, Queensbury, which gives his secondary title to the Duke of Buccleuch and the title of Marquess to a branch of the House of Douglas, and Ettrick-Pen. The three longest rivers of the River Nith, the River Annan and the River Esk, Dumfriesshire, the basins of which form the great dales by which the county is cloven from north to south: Nithsdale, Annandale and Eskdale. For the point where it enters Dumfriesshire, 16 miles from its source near Enoch Hill in Ayrshire, the course of the Nith is mainly southeasterly until it enters the Solway, a few miles below Dumfries. Its total length is 65 miles, and its chief affluents are, on the right, the Kellow Water, Yukon Water, Score Water, Clewden Water and River Cargan, and, on the left, the River Croik, Carron Water, Dumfriesshire and River Campy. The Annan rises near the Devil's Beef Tub, a remarkable chasm in the far north, and after flowing about 40 miles, mainly in a southerly course, it enters the Solway at Barnkirk headlands and bays. It receives, on the right, the Kinnell Water, and, on the left, the Moffat Water, the Drive Water and the Water of Milk. For the confluence of the White Esk and the Black Esk, the Esk flows in a gradually southeasterly direction until it crosses the border, whence it sweeps to the SW through the extreme northwestern territory of Cumberland and falls into the Solway. Of its total course of 42 miles, 12 miles belong to the White Esk, 20 miles are of the Esk proper on Scottish soil and 10 miles are of the stream in its English course. On the right the Wauchope Water is the chief affluent, and on the left it receives the Megget Water, Hughes Water, Tarras Water, Little Water and River Line, the last being an English tributary, and a previous forming the border between Roxburghshire and Cumberland. Other rivers of the Locher Water, the Kirtle Water and the River Sark, all flowing into the Solway. For 1 mile of its course the Esk, and for 7 miles of its course the River Sark, formed the boundaries between Dumfriesshire and Cumberland. Loch Skene in the north and the group of lochs around Loch Mabon are the principal lakes. There are few glens so named in the Shire, but the passes of Dalveen, Entercon and Mennick, leading up from Nithsdale to the Lowther and other hills, yield to few glens in Scotland in the wild grandeur of the scenery. For part of the way Entercon Pass runs between mountains rising sheer from the burn to a height of nearly 2,000 feet. Loch Skene finds an outlet in Tailburn, the water of which at a short distance from the lake leaps from a height of 200 feet in a fine waterfall, known as the Grey Mare's Tail. A much smaller but picturesque fall of the same name, also known as Cricope Lynn, occurs on the Cricope near Thornhill. Mineral waters are found at Moffat, Hartfell Spa, some 3 miles farther north, Closeburn and Brow on the Solway. Geology. The greater portion of the county County of Dumfries belongs to the Silurian tableland of the south of Scotland, which contains representatives of all the divisions of that system from the Ayrshire to the Ludlow Rocks. By far the largest area is occupied by strata of Taranan and Llandovery, which cover a belt of country from 20 to 25 miles across from Drumlanrig Castle in the north to Torthwold in the south, consisting of massive grids, sometimes conglomeratic greywacres, flags and shales. These beds are repeated by innumerable folds, frequently inverted, striking northeast and southwest, and usually dipping towards the northwest. In the midst of this belt there are lenticular bands of older strata of Ayrshire, Annandale, Caradoc and Llandovery, composed of fine sediments such as cherts, black and grey shales, white clays and flags, which come to the surface along anticlinal folds and yield abundant graptolites characteristic of these divisions. These black shale bands are typically developed in Moffatdale. Indeed, the three typical sections chosen by Charles Lapworth to illustrate his three great groups, the Glenkill shales, the Hardfell shales, Birkhill shales, occur respectively in the Glenkill burn north of Kirkmichael, on Hardfell, and in Dobbs Lynn near St Mary's Loch in the basin of the River Annan, in the extreme northwest of the county between Drumlanrig Castle and Delvine Pass in the south and the Spango and Kellow waters on the north. There is a broad development of Ayrshire, Llandovery and Caradoc strata, represented by radiolarian cherts, black shales, grids, conglomerates, greywacres and shales which rise from underneath the central Taranan belt and are repeated by innumerable folds. In the cores of the arches of Ayrshire cherts there are diabase lavas, tuffs and agglomerates which are typically represented on Bale Hill east of Kirkcudbrightshire. Along the southern margin of the Taranan belt, the Wen Loch and Ludlow Rocks follow in normal order, the boundary between the two being defined by a line extending from the head of the Uise Water in Eskdale, southwest by Lockerbie to Mouse Wall. These consist of greywacres, flags and shales with bands of dark graptolite shales, the finer sediments being often well ground. They are likewise repeated by inverted folds, the axial planes being usually inclined to the southeast. The Silurian tableland in the northwest of the county is pierced by intrusive igneous rocks in the form of dikes and bosses, which are regarded as of lower Old Red Sandstone age. Of these, the granite mass of Spango Water, northeast of Kirkcudbrightshire, is an excellent example. Along the northwest margin of the county, on the north side of the fault bounding the Silurian tableland, the lower Old Red Sandstone occurs, where it consists of sandstones and conglomerates associated with contemporaneous volcanic rocks. The upper Old Red Sandstone forms a narrow strip on the south side of the Silurian tableland, resting uncomfortably on the Silurian rocks and passing upwards into the Carboniferous Formation. It stretches from the county boundary east of the Uise Water, southwest by Langham to Birrens Walk. Along this line these upper red sandstones and shales are overlaid by a thin zone of volcanic rocks which point to contemporaneous volcanic action. In this region at the beginning of the Carboniferous period, some of the vents from which these igneous materials may have been discharged are found along the watershed between Liddesdale and Teviotdale in Roxburghshire. The strata of Carboniferous age are found in three areas between Sanquhar and Kirkcudbrightshire, at Close Burn near Thornhill, in the district between Liddesdale and Ruthwell. In the first two instances the Carboniferous sediments lie in hollows worn out of the old Silurian tableland. In the Sanquhar basin the strata belong to the coal measures, and include several valuable coal seams which are probably the southern prolongations of the members of this division in Ayrshire. At the S.E. limit of the Sanka coalfield there are patches of the Carboniferous limestone series, but towards the N, these are overlapped by the coal measures which thus rest directly on the Silurian platform. At Closeburn and Barjog there are beds of marine limestone, associated with sandstones and shales which probably represent marine bands in the Carboniferous limestone series. The most important development of Carboniferous strata occurs between Liddesdale and Ruthwell. In the valleys of the Liddel and the Esk the following zones are represented, which are given in ascending order: the Witter sandstone, the cement stone group, the fell sandstones, the Glencartham volcanic group, marine limestone group with coal seams, millstone grit, Rowanburn coal group, Byreburn coal group, red sandstones of Canonby yielding plants characteristic of the upper coal measures. The coal seams of the Rowanburn field have been chiefly wrought, and in view of their exhaustion bores have been sunk to prove the coals beneath the red sandstone of Upper Carboniferous age. From a paleontological point of view, the Glencartham volcanic zone is of special interest, as the calcareous shale associated with the tuffs has yielded a large number of new species of fishes, decapod crustaceans, phylopods and scorpions. The Triassic rocks rest uncomfortably on all older formations within the county. In the tract along the Solway Firth they repose on the folded and eroded edges of the Carboniferous strata, and when traced westwards to the Dumfries basin they rest directly on the Silurian platform. They occur in 5 areas: between Annan and the mouth of the Esk, the Dumfries Basin, the Thornhill Basin, the Lochmaben Basin, Upper Annandale. The strata consist of breccias, false-bedded sandstones and mans, the sandstones being extensively quarried for building purposes. In the sandstones of Corncockle more reptilian footprints have been obtained. In the Thornhill Basin there is a thin zone of volcanic rocks at the base of the series which are evidently on the horizon of the lavas beneath the Auckland sandstones in Ayrshire. In the Sanka Basin there are small outliers of lavas probably of this age and several vents filled with agglomerate from which these igneous materials in the Thornhill Basin may have been derived. There are several striking examples of basalt dikes of tertiary age, one having been traced from the Lead Hills southeast by Moffat, across Eskdale Muir to the English border. Climate and industries. The climate is mild, with a mean annual temperature of around 9 degrees Celsius, July 15.3 degrees Celsius, and the average annual rainfall is 53 in. Towards the middle of the 18th century farmers began to raise stock for the south, and 100 years later 20,000 head of heavy cattle were sent yearly to the English markets. The Galloways, which were the breed in vogue at first, have been to a large extent replaced by Shorthorns and Ayrshire dairy cattle. Sheep breeding, of later origin, has attained to remarkable dimensions, the walks in the higher hilly country being given over to Cheviots, and the richer pasture of the low-lying farms being reserved for half-bred lambs, a cross of Cheviots and Leicesters or other long-wooled rams. Pig feeding, once important, has declined before the imports of bacon from foreign countries. Horse breeding is pursued on a considerable scale. Grain crops, of which oats are the principal, show a downward tendency. Arable farms range from 100 acres to 300 acres, and pastoral from 300 to 3,000 acres. In general, the industries are only of local importance and mostly confined to Dumfries and a few of the larger towns. Langham is famous for its Tweeds breweries and distilleries. distilleries are found at Annan, Sanquhar and elsewhere. Some shipping is carried on at Annan and Dumfries, and the salmon fisheries of the Nith and Annan and the Solway Firth are of value. Communications. As built, the Glasgow and South Western Railway from Glasgow to Carlisle runs through Nithsdale to Dumfries, practically following the course of the River Nith, then on to Annan and Lower Annandale to the English border at Gretna. A branch was built from Dumfries to Moniaiva, the Ken Valley Light Railway, but this closed in 1949. The Caledonian Railway from Carlisle to Glasgow runs through Annandale, which through Offit took a small branch to Moffat, now closed. At Lockerbie a cross-country line to Dumfries, and at Kirkcudbrightshire a line that ultimately crossed the Solway to Bowness, which is also closed. From Dumfries westwards there were rail communications on the Port Road to Castle Douglas, Newton Stewart, Stranraer and Port Patrick, with branches to Kirkcudbrightshire and Wigtown all closed and lifted. The North British Railway's Waverley route to Edinburgh from Carlisle was closed in the 1960s. There are vague plans to reopen this line to Carlisle as a continuation of the new rail link which is being rebuilt from Edinburgh to Tweed Bank. Until 1967 the North British Railway sent a short line to Langham from Riddings Junction in Cumberland, giving access to Carlisle. The last passenger train ran on the Langham branch on the 26th of March 1967, the last freight service on the 17th of September in the same year, and the track was lifted shortly thereafter. There is also an extensive local bus and coach network throughout the county, centred on Dumfries. There are no commercial airports in the county. Population and government. The population in 1891 was 74,245 and in 1901, 72,371, when there were 176 persons who spoke Gaelic and English. The chief towns are Annan, Dumfries, Langham, Lockerbie, Moffat. Other towns are Applegarth Town, Caerlaverock, Canonbie, Closeburn, Cummertrees, Dalton, Dornick, Dryfesdale, Dunscore, Durrisdeer, Eskdale Muir. Used list of listed buildings in use, Dumfries and Galloway, Glencairn, Gretna, Half Moreton. List of listed buildings in Half Moreton, Dumfries and Galloway, Hodham, Holywood. List of listed buildings in Holywood, Dumfries and Galloway, Hutton. List of listed buildings in Hutton and Corrie, Dumfries and Galloway, Johnston. List of listed buildings in Johnston, Dumfries and Galloway, Keir, Kirkconnell, Kirkmahoe. List of listed buildings in Kirkmahoe, Dumfries and Galloway, Kirkmichael. List of listed buildings in Kirkmichael, Dumfries and Galloway, Kirkpatrick Fleming, Kirkpatrick Juxta. List of listed buildings in Kirkpatrick Juxta, Dumfries and Galloway, Lochmaben, Middleby, Morton. List of listed buildings in Morton, Dumfries and Galloway, Mouswold. List of listed buildings in Mouswold, Dumfries and Galloway, Penpont, Ruthwell, St Mungard. List of listed buildings in St Mungard, Dumfries and Galloway, Sanquhar, Tynwald, Torthwold, Tundergarth. List of listed buildings in Tundergarth, Dumfries and Galloway, Tinron, Tinron Doon, Wamfrey. List of listed buildings in Wamfrey, Dumfries and Galloway, the Lads of Wamfrey, Newton Wamfrey, Westerkirk. List of listed buildings in Westerkirk, Dumfries and Galloway. The county returns one member to Parliament. Dumfries, the county town, Annan, Lochmaben and Sanquhar are royal burghs. Dumfries forms a sheriffdom with the shires of Kirkcudbrightshire and Wigtown, and there is a resident sheriff substitute at Dumfries, who sits also at Annan, Langham and Lockerbie. The shire is under school board jurisdiction, and some of the public schools earn grants for higher education. The county council and most of the borough councils give the bulk of the residue grant to the county, besides assisting building schemes, to subsidise high schools, to provide bursaries and apparatus, and to carry on science and technical classes, embracing agriculture, dairying and practical chemistry. There are academies at Dumfries, Annan, Moffat and other centres. History. Archaeological remains from the Neolithic and Bronze Age include stone circles, tumuli and cairns, and sculptured stones. A number of bank barrows and cursus have recently been discovered. The British tribe which inhabited this part of Scotland was called by the Romans Selgovi. They have left many signs of their presence, such as hill forts and camps. The country around Moffat especially is rich in remains. There are traces of the Roman roads which ran by Dalveen Pass into Clydesdale and up the Annan to Tweeddale, and the ruins of Blato Bulgium at Birns is one of the best preserved examples of a Roman camp. Roman altars, urns, and coins are found in many places. After the withdrawal of Roman power from Britain, the situation in Dumfries is not clear. The Selgovi were pressured by the power of Strathclyde, by Scots from Ireland, and the Angles from Northumberland. There is little writing preserved from this time, and that which did is ecclesiastical in nature. Archaeology, although rich on the ground, has rarely been investigated, and place names, used as an indication of influence, are still argued over by academics. In the parish church of Ruthwell is preserved an ancient Anglo-Saxon cross which tells in runic characters the story of the crucifixion. The Saxon conquest of Dumfriesshire does not seem to have been thorough in the west, the people of Nithsdale and elsewhere maintaining some Celtic institutions up to the time of David I, although this is not certain. As a border county, Dumfriesshire was the scene of stirring deeds at various epochs, especially in the days of Robert Bruce. Edward I besieged Caerlaverock Castle, and the factions of Bruce, John Cummin and John Balliol were at constant feud. The border clans, as haughty and hot-headed as the Gaels farther north, were always at strife. There is record of a bloody fight in Dumfriesshire in 1593, when the Johnstons slew 700 Maxwells, and, overtaking the fugitives at Lockerbie, they massacred most of the remnant. These factions embroiled the Dalesmen until the 18th century. The Highlands of the Shire afforded retreat to the persecuted Covenanters, who, at Sanquhar, published in 1680 the Declaration against the King, anticipating the principles of the Glorious Revolution by several years. Prince Charles Edward's ambition left the Shire comparatively untouched, for the Jacobite sentiment made little appeal to the people. Dumfriesshire is inseparably connected with the name of Robert Burns, who farmed at Ellisland Farm on the Nith for 3 years, and spent the last 5 years of his life in Dumfries. Thomas Carlyle was born at Ecclefechan, in a house still standing, and was buried beside his parents in the kirkyard of the old Secession Church. His farm of Craigenputtock was left to Edinburgh University in order to found the John Welsh bursaries in classics and mathematics. Folk history suggests that at Holywood, near Dumfries, there stand the relic of the grove of sacred oaks from which the place derived its name, and a stone circle known locally as the 12 Apostles. Outdoor activities. There are 3 of the world-class Seven Stains mountain biking centres in Dumfriesshire at Dalbeattie, Mabby and A. The Sustrans Route 7 long-distance cycle route also runs through the Dumfriesshire. There is excellent hill walking in the Moffat Hills. The southern upland way coast-to-coast walk passes through Dumfriesshire, and the 53-mile-long Annandale way travels from the Solway Firth into the Moffat Hills near the Devil's Beef Tub. There is also sailing on Castle Loch at Loch Mabon. People. Notable people from Dumfriesshire include James Burney Beck, U.S. Representative and U.S. Senator from Kentucky; Thomas Carlyle, essayist; Henry Duncan, clergyman. Andy Goldsworthy, sculptor. William Jarden Matheson, founder. Kirkpatrick Macmillan, inventor of the bicycle. Patrick Miller of Dalswinton, engineer and inventor. William Patterson, banker. Thomas Telford, engineer. Joseph Thomson, geologist and explorer. James McMurdo, first British political agent to Kutch State in India. Surnames. Most common surnames in Dumfriesshire at the time of the United Kingdom census of 1881, by order of incidence: 1. Bell, 2. Johnston, 3. Irving, 4. Graham, 5. Smith, 6. Scott, 7. Wilson, 8. Brown, 9. Thomson, 10. Little,